Good morning, good afternoon, or buenos días y buenas tardes. Yes, prep. This is Ms. Macias. I am the Director of Student Support at North Central, so shout out to my Trailblazers. But I also want to send a quick shout out to my Cavalier family out there. Today's advisory, we are going to be talking about Latinx Diaspora in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month, or as some people like to call it, Latino Heritage Month. So we are actually also going to talk about the difference between the terms in our presentation today, but I'm so excited to get this advisory lesson started. So real quick, this advisory lesson, we want to focus more around conversation. So all you need to have out is a notebook and something to write with. We also just want you to keep an open mind and to share from your experiences and to speak your truths. So as we move forward with the advisory, just remember to share what you know. So our main objective for today is to understand where the Latinx ethnicity comes from and how different races and communities make up the Latinx identity. So we just want to dive deep into why we don't all look the same, sound the same, speak the same languages, come from the same countries, as we move forward into this advisory. So before we continue, I want to answer a couple of questions. The main one is, why are we spending advisory time on this topic? So just in case you didn't know, Hispanic Heritage Month, also known as Latinx Heritage Month, is celebrated from September 15th through October 15th. Now you may ask yourself, why is it not celebrated from September 1st, all of September? Does it start in the middle of the month? And the main reason why it starts September 15th, because it is the anniversary of independence for Latin American countries. So it's the Independence Day for Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. So as a proud Guatemalan, my country is celebrating Independence Day on September 15th. September 16th, we have Mexico celebrating their Independence Day, and then Chile celebrates their Independence Day on September 18th. So as you can see, September 15th is a very good day for us to start because we are able to celebrate Independence Days from Latin American countries, but we also celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month or Latinx Heritage Month. We also want to use this time to not just celebrate around Hispanic and Latinx Heritage Month, we also want to educate around the Hispanic Latinx community. Okay, so you're asking yourself, like, Hispanic, Latin American, Latina, Latino, Latina with an at sign at the end, Latinx, like, oh my, like, which one do I use? So Hispanic, Latin American, Latino, Latina, and Latinx are not considered to be racial terms or any type of descriptor of race. They're only used to describe ethnic and cultural origins. For example, these umbrella terms encompass Indigenous Latinas, Afro-Hispanics, Asian American Latinos, and White Latinx. Even so, some people still choose not to identify by any of these terms, and they like to be appropriately represented by their personal identity based on like their country or their heritage. So for example, some Puerto Ricans really love to be called Boricuas. There's some Chicanos, Chicanx, a Salvadoran can say Abicho or Abicha, a Blaxican for somebody who is Black and Mexican descent, and in my country, in Guatemala, we're called Chapinos. So you can just choose whatever term best describes you to identify yourself. So the best rule of thumb is just to ask, like, what do you prefer to be identified as? And then last thing, so what is this term? What is diaspora? Here is the definition found in the dictionary: a group of people who spread from one original country to other countries, or the act of spreading in this way. An easier term or an easier way to think about it is just like all of the different groups that make up our Latinx community. Now, as much as I love to do all the talking, I'm actually not. So as you watch this video, in your notebook, I want you to start thinking about the answers to these questions. And then afterwards, we're going to have a discussion and be prepared to share during the discussion portion. What is something new you learned? What is something you were already aware of? How does this apply to you if you're Latino, Latina, Hispanic, or whatever term you use to identify yourself, or someone you know? And how have these stereotypes or misunderstandings been promoted by the media, social media, even the people around you? How is this video relevant and this information relevant to the Latinx diaspora? And what is there still left to learn? So let's watch the video.
Is Latin America a country? Are Latinos and Hispanics the same? Can you be Latino and white? People are pretty confused about Latin America. For example, there's this headline. Trump cuts aid to 3 Mexican countries. You know, last time I checked, there was only 1 Mexico. I mean, we got New Mexico, but that's a state. Sometimes people have a hard time telling the difference between Mexico and Latin America.
Show me Mexico on this map.
Now, it's not entirely your guys' fault. It's just that in your movies, shows, and media, you usually don't see the most diverse depictions of Latinos, if you even see us at all.
I don't know what you're talking about. There are tons of roles for Latinos in Hollywood. I mean, what about Tony Montana?
Say hello to my little friend!
He's Cuban.
No. Played by an Italian. That's what they call in the biz. Close enough.
Like, how can you learn about all of the varieties of Latinos when we're usually played by non-Latinos? This lack of representation hides just how diverse we are. Due to immigration and colonization, different kinds of Latinos exist everywhere. In the 19th and 20th century, Peru welcomed a large number of Chinese and Japanese immigrants to their shores. And today, Asian Latinos play a major role in the country's food, culture, and politics. And of course, I need to mention the communities of Afro-Latinos all across Latin America. From Colombia to Venezuela, Mexico to Brazil, Cuba to Dominican Republic, and everywhere in between, Afro-Latinos make up a large portion of our population and play a huge role in defining our way of life. Despite the huge number of Afro-Latinos, they're rarely represented in the media due to the bias against darker-skinned performers. But somebody who was too extravagant to be held back by any barrier was Celia Cruz. Born in Havana in 1925 with a natural gift for singing and dancing, it was obvious from a very young age that she was destined for stardom. While she was touring in Mexico, Fidel Castro rose to power and his government blocked her from returning to the country. But she wasn't discouraged. La Reina de Cuba became a US citizen and conquered the hearts of Latinos all over the world. From the rhythm and drums in her music to the titles themselves, like La Negra Tiene Tumbao, she wasn't afraid to tell the world exactly who she was. Even her unique iconic fashion was a love letter to her Afro-Caribbean roots. She mixed the colors and elements of Cuban and African patterns and style to make a stage presence that married both of the worlds. While something as simple as a dress or extravagant wigs doesn't seem that impactful at first glance, her career was being closely watched by young Afro-Latinas around the world. Such as the Afro-Latina pop singer Amara La Negra, who said this about Celia Cruz. Growing up, I never saw anyone who looked like me besides Celia Cruz. She was such a strong, powerful woman. She was a very inspirational person. Fortunately, we're seeing more and more representation in media. Afro-Latinas like Zoe Saldana are starring in the biggest box office hits of the year. Yalitza Aparicio was the first indigenous Latina woman to be nominated for an Academy Award. Representation of all types of Latinos makes a huge difference. The world is starting to see more and more examples of who we are as a whole. From our indigenous people to Afro-Latinos to our blonde-haired and blue-eyed siblings all over the planet. We have so many flavors of Latinos everywhere. We've been out here the whole time, so just come and get to know us. I just feel like what makes you a Latino is not the way you look, it's the way that you grew up. It's the way that you behave, it's the values that you have, and the way that you express and digest the world and your perspective on it.
Speed. West Side Story.
Natalie Wood, Russian.
What? Evita.
Madonna. Nobody told them La Isla Bonita isn't a real place.
How about Dora the Exploradora?
Yeah,
Yeah?
this one.
Oh.
So now it's time for our discussion. To sum it up, the heritage of Latin America blends indigenous, European, African, and Asian peoples, languages, and cultural traditions. There is no one Latin America or Latino or Latin American culture. Rather, it is all of these things. So we are going to open up the space for you to have a discussion with your advisory teacher and your advisory group. And as you are discussing and sharing, you can share by answering any of the following questions that I shared in the previous slide, or talk from your own experience. Again, we ask you to keep an open mind, to speak from your own truths, and just to share what you have experienced, and not to speak in general terms. Like, you don't want to assume this of all people. You just want to talk about your personal experience. Advisory teachers, at this time, go ahead and pause the video and lead this discussion. When you have about 1 to 2 minutes left in advisory, go ahead and unpause the video to see what the next steps are. There is only 1 slide left after this. So what are your next steps? Complete the exit ticket. Your advisory teachers will be dropping the link into your chats or sharing the links to you via another way. And then there's some additional optional reading. Here is where we got most of the information from today. It's a blog called An Overview of Latino and Latin American Identity, and the link is there. Know that we will be having more discussion topics around Hispanic Heritage Month for the next 3 advisories after this. So thank you so much. I hope you learned something new, and I hope you continue this discussion further.